There is a version of you that the world has never seen, not because it doesn't exist, but because everything around you, from the time you were very young, has been quietly, consistently working to keep you from ever fully finding it. The exhaustion you carry isn't weakness. It's what happens when a spirit that was designed to operate at full capacity is forced to run at a fraction of itself, day after day, year after year, until that fraction starts to feel like the real you. And the ache, you know the one I mean, that low, quiet feeling sitting underneath everything else. The feeling that something is off between the life you're currently living and the life you feel, somewhere deep inside, that you were supposed to be living. You've pushed it down. You've told yourself to be grateful. You've tried to explain it away as overthinking, or anxiety, or just one of those things. But it keeps coming back. Chosen one, here is what I need you to hear before we go any further. That ache is not a problem. That ache is your spirit recognizing something. It's recognizing the distance between who you've become and who you actually are. And today, that distance is going to get a lot smaller. Before we go deeper, I need to ask you to stay with this until the end. Because by the time we're done, 3 things are going to be clear that most people spend their entire lives never figuring out. You're going to understand why your spirit has felt suppressed without knowing the reason. You're going to hear the real truth about who you are, not the version that years of hard living shaped you into. And you're going to see every difficult season you've ever been through in a way you never have before. So stay. What's coming is worth it. Now, I want to slow down for a moment. Because before I can tell you who you are, I have to acknowledge what you've been carrying. You've been the one who shows up, even when it costs you something. Even when nobody notices. Even when the weight you were carrying was heavier than anything you should have had to hold alone, and you stayed anyway. You've been the one who feels things at a depth that other people around you don't seem to reach. Not because you're dramatic, not because you're too much, but because something inside you is calibrated differently. It picks up what other people walk right past. It registers what other people wave away. You've been the one who lies awake at night, not from panic, but from something that feels more like longing. A quiet, persistent sense that somewhere between who you were and who you are now, something got lost. And you haven't been able to name it. You've just been living with that feeling that you are somehow living beneath yourself. And the people around you, if they noticed at all, gave you the wrong answers. Be more positive. Stop overthinking. Push through. You're just tired. So you pushed. And you kept going. And you kept showing up. But the feeling never left. Here's what nobody told you, chosen one. That feeling, that quiet ache, that sense of a gap between who you are and who you're supposed to be, that is not depression. That is not ingratitude. That is not a character flaw to manage. That is your spirit being accurate. Your spirit sees something your mind hasn't fully put into words yet. It sees the distance between your current reality and your actual capacity. And it has been trying to get your attention through the restlessness, through the longing, through that feeling you can't shake, that you were made for something that goes much further than where you're standing right now. And I want to ask you something right now, not to stand up, not to go anywhere, just breathe. And in that breath, I want you to silently acknowledge, just for yourself, that the ache you've been calling a problem is actually your spirit calling you home. If something just shifted when I said that, even slightly, drop a single word in the comments below. Any word at all that describes what you're feeling in this moment, because you are not alone in this. Now, I want to take you somewhere. Because understanding who you really are requires understanding how you were made. And this is the part that most people miss entirely. Chosen ones are not shaped in the spotlight. They are not formed in comfort or easy seasons or straightforward paths. The development of a spirit like yours doesn't happen in public. It happens in the hidden places, in the quiet, in the long stretches that feel like nothing, in the seasons that look like waiting but are actually something else entirely. What felt like abandonment was actually assignment. What felt like delay was actually development. What felt like silence was actually strategy. What felt like you being forgotten was actually you being protected from things that would have interrupted what was being built. Picture something for a moment, not a grand, dramatic scene, something quieter. Picture the roots of an old tree pushing down through dark soil, through rock, through cold, through resistance, not because the tree is struggling, but because the tree is building the foundation that will hold everything that's coming above ground. The branches, the weight, the seasons. You've been in the root season. What looked like nothing growing was everything deepening. What felt like you standing still was your spirit going down to levels that most people never reach, because most people never have to. And that depth, that weight-bearing capacity, that groundedness, that is exactly what's going to hold the life that's on its way. And here's something I need you to understand, because it matters. The formation required the hiding. The hiddenness was not punishment, it was protection. Because what's being built inside you has a value that certain environments and certain seasons would have damaged too early if it had been exposed too soon. Before the world told you to be less, you were already taking in more than your environment could hold. Before the years of learning to moderate yourself and make yourself acceptable, you were already seeing further than what was directly in front of you. Before the silence of your longest season settled in, your spirit was already carrying something that couldn't be named, but absolutely could be felt. That something didn't disappear, but something happened to it. Stay with me, because what's coming next is going to completely change how you understand your own story. And if this has been hitting something real so far, drop a word in the comments that describes the season you're in right now. Just one word. Because somebody else is going to read it and realize they're not as alone as they thought. Now I want to show you something. 4 things you've been calling weakness. 4 experiences you've lived with that you assumed were signs of limitation. And I want to show you what they actually are. The first one. You feel what other people feel, often before they've said anything at all. You walk into a room and you know, without anyone telling you, whether the energy is safe or whether something is wrong. You sense when someone is hurting, even while they're smiling. You register emotional texture that most people filter out completely without even realizing they're doing it. You've been calling this a burden. You've been told you're too sensitive. But this isn't a wound. This is perception. This is a spirit operating at a frequency that most people's instruments simply cannot detect. The second one. You've had moments in your life, not many, but real, where you just knew something before it happened. Before there was any logical reason to know it, a quiet certainty arrived. And later, it was right. You pushed those moments aside because you didn't know how to explain them. But they are not accidents. They are your spirit recognizing patterns at a level that runs below rational thought. The third one. There have been specific seasons in your life, windows of time, where everything clicked, where ideas came without effort, where decisions felt obvious, where you moved through your days with a kind of aliveness that felt like a completely different version of yourself, and then it faded. And you've been quietly chasing that feeling ever since without knowing what it was or how to find your way back to it. That state had a name, and we are going to get to that name very soon. The fourth one. No matter how hard you try, you cannot settle for a small life. Something in you refuses, even when you've told yourself to stop being so restless, even when you've tried to talk yourself into being content with less. People have called that pride, or ambition, or not knowing when to be grateful, but it's not any of those things. It's your spirit knowing its assignment. It's the part of you that was given something specific to carry into the world, and that part knows the difference between the life it was designed for and the life it's currently in. Every time you felt more deeply than the room could hold, that was your spirit. Every time you sensed something before anyone else did, that was your spirit. Every time that window of aliveness opened and everything felt clear, that was your spirit. Every time the small life felt wrong in a way you couldn't put into words, that was your spirit. If you recognized yourself in any of those four, you are exactly who this video is for. And if something in you just said yes to any of them, drop the words, "I am a chosen one," in the comments right now. Because you're not just typing words, you're claiming something that was always true. But here's the question that has to be answered. If your spirit is this strong, if it's capable of all of that, why doesn't it feel that way most of the time? Why does it come and go? Why is it sometimes completely out of reach? That question has a very specific answer, and the answer is going to surprise you. So now you know, your spirit is strong. It always was. The depth, the perception, the knowing, the inability to settle. Those aren't flaws. Those are markers. Evidence of something operating at a frequency most people around you never reach. But knowing that is only part of it, because there's still a gap, isn't there, between that truth and what you actually feel when you wake up. Between who I've been describing and the version of you that gets tired, that doubts, that sometimes can't access any of that clarity at all. And that gap is the real question. Why does a spirit this strong sometimes feel so far away? And in this moment, something has been placed on my heart that I want to pass on to you exactly as I received it. I never diminished what I placed inside you. The world tried. The hard seasons tried. The systems that shaped you tried. But I placed it deeper than any of that could reach. What you think is gone is only quiet. What you think has faded is only waiting. I did not plant something in you that could be uprooted by what you've been through. Let that sit for a moment, because there's a discovery that connects directly to what was just said. A discovery from neuroscience, from decades of research into how the human brain operates at its highest capacity, that begins to explain exactly what's been happening to you. Scientists who study brain frequencies call it the frequency switch, a specific neurological mechanism that governs how much of your spirit's full capacity you can actually access in your daily life. I'm going to tell you everything about it in part 2, but hold that phrase for now, the frequency switch, because what you learn about it is going to change how you see every season you've been through. In part 2, I'm going to show you 3 things. First, the real name for what has been suppressing your spirit's access. It is not what you think. It is not a spiritual attack. It is not a character flaw. It is something that happens to almost every human being on Earth, and it has a very specific, very documented beginning. Second, I'm going to show you the neuroscience behind those moments of clarity you've experienced, the ones where everything clicked and you felt completely alive. And I'm going to explain exactly why they came and why they faded. And third, the most important declaration about your true identity that you may have ever heard. Part 2 is ready. And before you go there, if any part of what I just said landed somewhere real, leave a word in the comments. This room has more chosen ones in it than you know. Welcome back. If this is your first time here, you can follow everything that comes next without having seen part 1. But if you haven't watched it yet, I want you to know it's worth going back to. In part 1, we talked about 4 things you've been calling weakness that are actually markers of a strong spirit. We talked about the formation, the hidden seasons that were building something in you that you couldn't see from inside of them. And I left you with a phrase I want to come back to right now, the frequency switch. That's where we're going. Because underneath everything we've been discussing, there's a mechanism. And once you understand it, the story of your own life is going to make a completely different kind of sense. Let me describe something to you. When you were very young, before school, before anyone started shaping you into who you needed to be to survive in the world, there was a version of you that was fully open. You absorbed everything around you. You noticed things adults didn't think to mention. You made connections between things that didn't seem related and somehow got them right. You moved through the world with a kind of aliveness, as if everything was worth paying attention to, as if the whole universe was interesting and close. That wasn't just childhood being childhood. That was your spirit at full capacity. Before the world told you to be less, you were already taking in more than your environment could hold. Before the years of learning to moderate yourself and manage yourself and make yourself acceptable to the people and systems around you, you were already seeing further than what was directly in front of you. Before the silence of your hardest season settled in, your spirit was already carrying something that couldn't be named, but absolutely could be felt. That capacity didn't go anywhere. But here is what I need you to understand. And this is the turning point of everything we've been building toward. Your spirit isn't just strong in a general sense. Your spirit has a specific architecture. 3 things are built into it that are not random and are not common. The first is depth perception, the ability to feel and understand what's happening beneath the surface of any situation, any relationship, any moment in time. Most people live on the surface. Your spirit was calibrated for depth. That's not poetic language. That's an accurate description of how you actually process the world. The second is pattern recognition that runs below rational thought. That knowing before knowing. The intuition that arrives without being asked and turns out to be right. That's not your imagination running ahead of you. That's a faculty that most people have gradually shut down, usually without ever realizing it happened. The third is frequency sensitivity, the ability to sense the emotional and energetic temperature of any room you enter. Most people can't read a space the way you can. Most people don't carry the weight of what's unspoken in a conversation the way you do. You do. You always have. And you always wondered if that was too much. It was never too much. It was always the point. These are not burdens, chosen one. These are design features. They are the anatomy of a spirit that was built for something specific. And someone out there right now needs to hear this. Maybe not you, but someone close to you. Someone who has spent years being told they feel too much, care too much, are too intense for the world around them. If that person exists in your life, share this with them. Not as a hint, as a gift. Because what they've been calling their greatest flaw is the exact shape of their calling. They deserve to know. Now, here is the part that most people in this space will never say out loud, because it requires admitting something uncomfortable about the world we actually live in. If your spirit is built the way I've been describing, if the depth and the perception and the frequency sensitivity are genuinely there, then why doesn't it show up consistently? Why do those windows of clarity come and go? Why does the strong spirit sometimes feel completely out of reach, like you're trying to find a signal in static? There is a name for what's been happening. I call it the volume effect. Here's how it works. Your spirit was never erased. The frequency was never deleted. What happened is simpler than that, and in some ways more frustrating. The volume was turned down. And 3 specific things turned it down. The first is the way most of us were educated. Starting around age 7, the systems we were placed in began rewarding a very specific kind of thinking. Logical, sequential, compliant, predictable. And in doing that, quietly, gradually, they began suppressing the other kind of thinking. The intuitive kind, the connective kind, the kind that your spirit naturally operates in. Scientists who study brain development have documented this pattern and given it a name. They call it the decline effect. The point in childhood where the brain's highest frequency activity begins to decrease, not because it's damaged, but because it's being systematically underused. The second is relational conditioning. Over years, most of us learn which version of ourselves is safe to show. The version that's too much learns to get quiet. The version that feels too deeply learns to manage it before it reaches the surface. The version that sees things others don't begins to notice the looks on people's faces and decides to stop saying it out loud. And slowly, the spirit learns to stay below the waterline. Not because it's gone, because it's been taught that being fully present isn't always welcome. The third is the chronic low-frequency state of simply surviving daily life. Stress, noise, urgency. The constant pressure of keeping up, managing, making it through. When the nervous system is locked into that mode, the brain's highest frequency activity, the very thing your spirit needs to surface at full capacity, cannot reach its peak. It's like trying to hear a whisper in the middle of traffic. The signal is there. The noise is louder. But here is the thing I need you to hold on to. And I mean really hold this. The volume was turned down. It was not turned off. The signal was suppressed. It was not lost. And what can be turned down can be turned back up. This is where I want to be very direct with you. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not too late. Not as a pep talk, not as a way to make you feel better, as a diagnosis, an accurate one. The seasons you've been through, the formation, the silence, the long stretches where nothing seemed to move, none of that was punishment. None of it was evidence that you were forgotten or passed over or not chosen after all. It was evidence that something was being built, slowly, carefully, at a depth that required time before it could hold its shape. The fact that you feel what you feel, that you're drawn to messages like this one, that something in you recognizes truth when it hears it, without needing it to be proven first, that is not random, that is not coincidence, that is not an accident, that is your spirit recognizing what it always knew. And if something in you just confirmed that, if something shifted even slightly when I said it, that shift is real. That is the signal coming through. And chosen one, if you've been waiting for some confirmation that you are exactly where you're supposed to be, even in the middle of the hardest season of your life, let this be that confirmation. Because right now, something has been placed on my heart for you, and I want to say it directly. Child, I did not bury what I placed in you. I planted it, and planted. Things are not lost. They are waiting for the right season to rise. The silence you experienced was not my absence. It was my preparation. What you have been calling your weakness is what I have been making unbreakable. You are not almost ready. You are being readied. And there is a difference between those two things. Let that be still inside you. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not too late. Now, I want to tell you about something that connects directly to everything we've been discussing, because understanding the volume effect is one thing. But there's also the question of what you can actually do about it, and the answer, when I first came across it, surprised me. In part 1, I introduced a phrase, the frequency switch. Let me tell you what that actually is. For decades, a field of neuroscience has been quietly studying what happens in the brain during those windows of clarity you've experienced. Those moments where everything clicked, ideas came without effort, decisions felt obvious, and you moved through your day with a kind of aliveness you couldn't explain. What researchers found, when they measured brain activity during those states, was a very specific kind of brainwave. Scientists call it the gamma wave. It is the highest frequency brainwave the human brain produces. When gamma is active, your brain is operating at its most connected, most intuitive, most creative state. The moments in your life when things just flowed, when your instincts were sharp, when the thinking was clear and effortless, those were gamma states. And they weren't random gifts or lucky days. They were your brain operating exactly the way it was designed to operate. Now here's the part that connects directly to the decline effect I mentioned. Research from institutions including MIT, Harvard, and Princeton has documented that gamma activity in the average adult is significantly lower than it was in childhood. And the research points to the same three mechanisms we already talked about: the education system, the relational conditioning, the chronic stress of survival mode. Over time, those three things suppress gamma, which means they suppress the exact frequency your spirit needs to come fully to the surface. And for someone like you, someone who was born with more of this than average, someone whose depth and perception and frequency sensitivity point to a naturally high gamma baseline, the suppression is felt more deeply. Because the gap between who you are at full capacity and who you've been forced to operate as is wider than it is for most people. There was a teacher, 43 years old, She had spent more than a decade helping other people grow, guiding other people toward their potential, while quietly feeling like she herself had stopped moving entirely. She described her mind as running at 30%. Like the ideas that used to come freely now had to be pulled out by force, and even then they felt thin. 3 weeks after she began a daily 7-minute practice specifically designed to re-entrain gamma brainwave activity, she wrote something that stayed with me. She said, "The ideas are just appearing again. The decisions I had been putting off for almost a year, I made in one morning. I don't know how to explain it. I just know something came back that I thought was gone." That practice was developed by Dr. Robert Lake, a neuroscientist with 34 years of experience studying brain entrainment. What he created is called the Genius Song, a 7-minute audio track that uses precise sound frequencies to synchronize the brain directly into gamma activity. Not through meditation, which can take months of consistent daily practice before the brain begins to shift in measurable ways, through sound entrainment, which works on the mechanism itself. It speaks directly to the frequency. And the brain, because it's designed to respond to frequency, responds. I know what some of you are thinking right now. You've tried things before. Healing audio, different tools and techniques, and they didn't move the needle the way you hoped. I understand that. And I want to be honest about why those approaches often don't produce what this one does. They don't target gamma directly. They create general conditions that might, over time, allow the brain to approach it. Brain entrainment targets the mechanism. That's the difference. I can't promise you a specific outcome or a specific timeline. What I can tell you is that the science behind this is real, documented, and peer-reviewed. And 18,366 people have now used it. Here's what it looks like practically. The standard price is $49. For the people watching this specific video, it's available at $39. That price doesn't exist on Amazon. It doesn't exist anywhere else online. It was set specifically for people who find it through this. With it, you receive 4 bonuses at no additional cost. An audio track designed to activate focused and confident brain states in children. The original book that inspired the film The Secret, which goes significantly deeper than the film, valued at $20 on its own. A guided visualization covering 4 areas of life: finances, relationships, health, and purpose. And a printed infographic of the 5 most important daily habits for building the life you're working toward. And if you don't notice a difference, you receive every dollar back, no questions, no explanation required. One thing I want to be clear about: there are other products online using the Genius Song name that are not the real thing. They carry the name, but they don't contain the actual brain entrainment technology. The only way to receive the original, with the full sound frequency technology, the 4 bonuses, and the money-back guarantee, is through the link I've placed in the description and in the pinned comment of this video, not through a search, not through any other channel. If you want to explore it, it's there. Read about it. Take your time. Decide for yourself. And whether you explore it or not, here is what I want you to hold from this section. Your gamma didn't disappear. Your frequency didn't die. The volume was turned down. And what was turned down can be turned back up. That isn't wishful thinking. That's what the research says. Before I let you go, I want to do something. Because throughout this whole conversation, we've been talking about who you are, and about the distance between the life you're living and the life your spirit has always recognized as yours. And I want to close that distance, even by a little, before you leave. You are not watching this alone right now. Somewhere across the world, other chosen ones are in this exact moment with you. Different faces, different languages, different stories, but the same spirit. The same recognition, the same quiet knowing that what they've been carrying is not what they've been told it is. And what's happening in this moment is not just personal. It's something larger than any one of us. So I want to say this as clearly as I know how to say it. You are not who they said you were. You are not what your hardest season made you feel like you were. You are not too much, too late, too broken, or too far from where you were supposed to be. And I hear the Father saying this directly to you right now. You are chosen. You are commissioned. You are equipped. The Spirit inside you is stronger than anything that has ever come against it. And what was placed in you did not come with an expiration date. That is not positive self-talk. That is not wishful thinking. That is the truth about who you are. You are leaving this different from how you came in. Not because of anything I said. Because your spirit recognized what it always knew. If this message met you somewhere honest today, consider joining this community, not for the numbers, because more is coming. And I believe the people who found this video were meant to be here for what comes next. If someone in your life has spent years being told they feel too much, that they're too deep, that they're too intense for the world around them, share this with them. Not as a suggestion, as a gift, because you might be the only person in their life who would even think to pass it on. And in the comments below, I want to ask one thing of you. Drop a declaration, not a question, not a request, a declaration of who you are, because your words have weight. And choosing to name yourself, even in a comment, even anonymously, is not a small act. You are not who the hard season said you were. You never were.